The Nintendo Wii was a groundbreaking experiment for Nintendo, asserting its dominance over the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. Its main gimmick was being really fun and accessible thanks to its motion controls. Many Wii games were built from the ground up with motion controls in mind. It was so lucrative that both Sony and Microsoft tried to take a piece of the pie from Nintendo. Microsoft came up with the Kinect, an accessory that doesn't require any controllers. Sony, on the other hand, implemented something much closer to what Nintendo had already done. While it had a great launch, the writing was already on the wall for it. This is the PlayStation Move. So what exactly happened here? The 7th generation was primarily known for its high-intensity games, strong competition, many hardware failures, and the implementation of motion controls into each major system. This was pioneered by Nintendo with the introduction of the Wii, which was a console marketed primarily with its motion controls capabilities in mind. Nintendo opted for having a single main control that was powered by AA batteries and a nunchuck accessory that drew power from the main controller. Motion controls, although the focus for this system, were not very precise and did leave at least a little more to be desired. Regardless of this fact, the Wii was already outperforming the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, which led both Sony and, of course, Microsoft to think about the casual gamer, a market that they haven't really tapped into. Microsoft came up with the Kinect as their answer to the Wii, being a much more futuristic approach to motion controls as it took the controller away from the gamer. It only required a camera sensor and a lot of living room space, but your movements would be mimicked on screen. Now, Sony, on the other hand, went for a more scaled-back approach, opting to keep the controller but make it their own. PlayStation Move was Sony's interpretation of what true motion controls would be like on the PlayStation 3. So Sony opted for a two-controller setup, similar to what Nintendo did. You have the main controller, which is larger, now featuring your typical PlayStation buttons, the Move button, the Home button, and Start and Select buttons on the side. You also got a shoulder button on the back. On top, you will find this orb that lights up in different colors, and it is in fact squishy, unlike what the look of it might suggest at first. The second controller, which is only used in certain games, is smaller, featuring only the X and O buttons. The directional pad, home button, analog stick, and two shoulder buttons are on the back. Unlike the Wii Remote and nunchuck combo, these are much more comfortable to hold for long periods of time because of the shape. Sony also included the ability to recharge these natively, either through the pins on the bottom or the mini USB port as well. This is a vast improvement in terms of usability, since both of these controllers are completely untethered and don't require the constant purchasing of batteries for use. Now, this combination of controllers worked through a camera known as the PlayStation Eye, a required accessory for all of this to work. You can think of it as a sensor bar for your controllers, or even a pseudo Kinect. It connects to your PlayStation 3 through the USB port, and it should work on all PlayStation 3 models. The camera is in charge of separating the controllers from the environment, which is made much easier through the glowing ball on top. This glowing ball can light in virtually any color and distract on an XYZ axis to determine depth, vertical, and horizontal movement. But this hardware also uses accelerometers to determine at what speed these controllers are being moved. It essentially had it all, thanks to a built-in gyroscope, something that the Wii Remote lacked at launch. This is something that made movements feel more natural than they did in the competition. So PlayStation Move launched in September of 2010, a few weeks before the Kinect from Microsoft made its debut. As exciting as the PlayStation Move was, launching at $100 if you purchased it bundled with the main controller, secondary controller, eye, and game, the Kinect drew a lot of attention away from it once that one actually launched. People just saw the idea behind the Kinect as a controllerless concept much more appealing, and to many, it was worth the $150 price tag without any games being bundled with it at first. And nevertheless, Sony did push the PlayStation Move, and arguably, they could even offer a better experience to the casual gamer than the competition did. The issues with the PlayStation Move start with the hardware and kind of end with the software. Of course, many people did complain about the buttons layout for these controllers since some of the buttons repeat on both versions of the controllers, especially odd if you're using both of them to begin with. And of course, you have concerns surrounding the accuracy of this whole setup. Similarly to the Kinect and unlike the Wii Remote, you needed a decent amount of space, which made PlayStation Move difficult to use in smaller environments and even rendered it unplayable for some. However, the PlayStation Move had had something that put it above the rest of the competition: controller accuracy. This controller was more accurate than the Wii Remote, even with the Motion Plus accessory, or even than the Kinect itself. This offered the most reliable user experience between them. That light orb and camera combination, as well as a native gyroscope support, made this setup the most consistently functional of the bunch. The backend title for the PlayStation Move was Sports Champions. This game features multiple minigames in the style of Kinect Sports and Wii Sports, and you have to navigate the menus by moving the control where it needs to go. You could play archery, bocce, disc golf, gladiator, duel, beach volleyball, and table tennis. All of these had varying levels of fun, but I'd say that they were enjoyable for the most part, even if they did lack the charm of Wii Sports. A standout in this collection is Gladiator Duel, utilizing two controllers, one as a shield and the other as a sword. This concept, to me, never really got old. And developers did make note of the PlayStation Move, as many tried to port Wii titles to the PlayStation 3. Games such as Order Up, GoldenEye 007 Reloaded, Time Crisis, among a bunch of other titles, were still quite enjoyable on the system. The games were fun, and there were still more games coming out with PlayStation Move support. However, PlayStation Move struggled quite a bit during its life. The PlayStation Move was more precise than the Wii Remote, even with the Motion Plus accessory, but the PlayStation Move did not have the same mass appeal that the Wii did. I believe that the Wii did really well for primarily two reasons: motion controls within very fun games that drew in many casual gamers and introduced a whole new market of gamers, from people who have never cared about gaming previously to even those who would just play on an occasional basis. The second reason being that it came out far before these did, which helped to popularize the Wii as a system for casual gamers, and it brought it onto so many people's homes. The Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 were systems aimed at the hardcore gamer, and while these can overlap, they are still pretty different audiences. So when both Microsoft and Sony tried introducing motion controls to try and appeal to the casual gamer, their current fan base wasn't that interested. And as I always say, this generation almost everyone had a PlayStation 3 with a Wii or an Xbox 360 with the Wii. Most people had a Wii. In fact, more people owned a Wii, and they did either one of these systems. People were already pretty happy with the Wii. The Kinect was really exciting at first, but this hype fizzled out really quickly, with so many cancelled projects and very few games actually making it into the Kinect. Once the 8th generation console race began, Microsoft also shifted the Kinect into becoming a camera that would always be on. This was changed later, but after this, no one wanted anything to do with the Kinect. Once the Wii U launched, Nintendo was mostly moving away from motion controls, focusing on touch controls and gestures with the Wii U pad while being backwards compatible with original Wii games and controllers. This was back in 2012, by the way, only 2 years after PlayStation Move was introduced. It was too little too late, with not enough support, which meant that not a lot of people actually bothered with PlayStation Move. In 2013, Sony announced the PlayStation 4, which was met with a lot of support for their audiences and Xbox 360 refugees, but PlayStation Move was hardly mentioned, and this was only 3 years after its launch. It was pretty clear that Sony wanted to move on. A few years later, Microsoft discontinued the Kinect, and they have not tried anything like this ever since. Microsoft has been gimmick-free, for better or for worse. However, PlayStation Move hadn't really died, even by that time. Now sadly, PlayStation Move was certainly a failure, considering that direct support for PlayStation Move games dwindled quickly. PlayStation 4 did still support PlayStation Move, and it is backwards compatible with PlayStation 3 games, which means that you can still enjoy your Move games on it. In total, PlayStation Move only managed to sell 15 million units worldwide, which is a far cry from what even the Kinect achieved, at roughly 35 million units. It was an interesting effort from Sony, but it just wasn't something that could be successful in a world where everyone already has a Wii and doesn't need other versions of it. Nonetheless, there is still plenty of fun to be had with a setup like this. But the PlayStation Move did not die just like that, as it actually lived for longer than the Kinect thanks to the introduction of PlayStation VR, which carried over to the PlayStation 4 and is still being supported with the PlayStation 5. We will talk about this one in due time, so subscribe so that you don't miss that mini documentary when it comes out. Now thank you so much for watching. Leave your suggestions in the comments for future bite-sized documentaries, and until next time.